Hello, my name is Sheye Falujo. I'm still going to continue the teaching we started earlier on lessons from the life of Timothy. I shared from chapter 2, now in chapter 4. These were specific instructions Apostle Paul gave Timothy concerning himself. He gave him instructions concerning the church, concerning the choosing of leaders, bishops, and deacons. And then he gave him instructions concerning himself as a minister and as a believer, because as young ministers, you are first a believer before you're a minister. So daily you have to deal with the flesh just the way every other believers do. That you are preaching preaching the word does not mean you'll be exempted from every other thing other believers have to deal with or have to go through. So he had to give him specific instructions concerning himself too. And this is why the Bible says that we are but of yesterday. Inquire from the old, from the fathers, and that is that though your beginning was small, yet your later end will get greatly increased. And this is why you must never underestimate the place of a father, mentors, people who have gone ahead in ministry that can put us on the right path as regard the ministry God has given unto us. So the Timothys I'm referring to are the people who are young with the call of God upon their lives, but they are yet to give full expression to it. So still on the instructions Paul gave Timothy concerning himself, I go to chapter 1 Timothy 4 verse 14. It says, do not neglect the gift that is in you, which was given to you by prophecy, with the laying on of the hands of the presbytery. There are things that comes by studying. There are things that comes by you reading the word and praying. But there are things that will come upon you through impartation. You must never despise impartation. I like the way it was put in Message translation. It says, do not neglect that special gift of ministry that was placed in you by the laying on of hands. There are things that will be communicated to you by the impartation of the people that are ahead of you. There are things God will, place in you, communicate to you in order to effectively fulfill the ministry He has given you. The Bible says God has placed gifts in men. There are graces upon men. There are graces in men that God will communicate. And this is why you must never despise impartation, never despise the laying of hands. Everyone God has placed ahead of you to communicate this gift. He says, don't neglect that gift. Fan it to flame. Every day, use it. Make sure you're fan it to flame in the place of prayer, studying with it. There are things that you begin to see in your life and ministry that it's not a product of your effort. It's not a product of you reading the scriptures. It's not a product of you praying. It's not the amount of times you spend in prayer. It's by impartation that has come upon your life. Men laying hands upon you and declaring prophetic words over you. There are levels you'll never get to in ministry except through this. And this is why you must never despise impartation. So don't neglect the gift that is in you. Don't lay it aside. Put it to use. Exercise that gift daily. If it is the gift of teaching that has been communicated by the laying of hands, there are graces that will be communicated to you in the course of impartation. So don't neglect this gift. And then the other part, which I love most, I love this part, is a part I had to stay on for a long while because, a lot of times we get lost. We get so deep in the responsibilities we have been given as pastors, as ministers, that we forget ourselves. We forget that we are also believers. You live as a minister, you can be in self-deception because your activity does not mean spirituality. So a lot of people have been in self-deception for long because people see them on the platform doing one thing or the other, but personally they are gone. They don't have a prayer life, they don't have an altar, they are lost. They are lost. Don't ever get to that point in ministry where you are just, putting up appearances for people to maintain their perception of you, but then you have lost touch with God. You've lost touch with the one that sent you. 1 Timothy 4:16, it says, take heed to yourself. Take heed to yourself and to the doctrine. Continue in them, for in doing this you will save both yourself and those who hear you. I like the way it was put in I like the way the Passion Translation put this. It says, give careful attention to your spiritual life. I know you are to intercede for people, you are to counsel people, you are to teach people, you are to instruct, you are to direct, you are to do a lot of things as a minister. But then you must also pay careful attention to yourself. This was why Apostle Paul says, having preached to others, I discipline my body, I bring my body under, so that after having preached to others, so that I will not be a castaway, so that I will not miss the prize. Because there are responsibilities too that has to do with me. There are things I have to do. I still have to deal with the flesh the way the believers do with the other believers deal with the flesh. Jesus conquered the sin nature. He didn't conquer the flesh. And that's why the Bible says that the flesh is always producing desires in us, contradicting the spirit, and the spirit also helps us, stimulates in us the right desire, so that we do not give into the cravings of the flesh. So as a minister, you have to walk in the spirit. It says, give careful attention to your spiritual life. You may preach fire on social media, you may preach fire on your platforms, but who are you in your neighborhood? Who are you in your house? Are you a good father? Are you a good mother? Are you a good brother? Are you a good sister? Who are you at your workplace? It says, give careful attention to your spiritual life. What's your love walk like? Take heed to yourself. You also, how you live must be in sync with what you preach. How you live must be in sync with what you preach. It's not like you are preaching one thing and then you are living another thing. In fact, what makes your teaching effective is if it's an expression, an outflow of the life that you have lived. It says it will produce, let me read the Passion Translation fully. It says, give careful attention to your spiritual life and every truth you teach. He says, for living what you preach will release even abundant life inside you and to all those who listen to you. It is when you live what you preach that, we have received life and life in abundance. It says more life will be released into you when you live what you preach. So what you preach must be in sync with how you live. This is the order God expects. As ministers, we tend to pay more attention to the people, the message, that we neglect ourselves. This is not what God expects. As much as you have desire to see people saved, to see people grow, to see people committed to God, to see the kingdom of God established in the heart of men, you must also pay careful attention to your own life. That you are preaching it does not mean you are living it. What you preach must be in sync with how you live. How you live must be in sync with what you preach. You must not you must not be a different person on pulpit and out of pulpit. God expects our lives to be in sync, and that is why Apostle Paul said, after having preached to others, I also discipline my body so that I will not miss the prize. I also have to deal with the flesh the way other believers deal with the flesh. Because you preach prayer on your platform or on social media does not mean you have a prayer life. The Bible said concerning Jesus in the book of Acts chapter 1, it says, of the former treatise I wrote to you, O Theophilus, of all Jesus began both to do and to teach. Jesus wasn't just teaching it, he was also living it. It says both to do and to teach. He was living the life and teaching the word. So also as a minister, you must not live in self-deception that you are preaching it and then you are not living. That's self-deception. So that you are preaching it does not mean you are living it, but if you live it, you will definitely preach it, because your message should be an expression, an outflow of the life you have before God, of a walk. It must be a product of your walk with God. It says by doing this, by paying careful attention to your life, it says abundant life will be released inside you and to those who hear you. That means how you live to has a way of affecting the people that are listening to you. This is the order God expects. I know you don't have to be a perfect, you may not be perfect yet, but you must be a work in progress. Everybody is a work in progress, but you must not get to that point where all your attention is, the reason you are studying the word is because you want to teach. The reason you are studying the word, you are not studying for you to be changed, you are not studying for you to be transformed. That desire for fellowship has been lost. You are not living the life. When you know how to preach prayer on pulpit, but you don't have a prayer life. You tell believers to deal with the flesh, but when it's your turn, you give into the cravings of the flesh, you're going to have to deal with the same thing every believer goes through. That was why Apostle Paul had to tell him, see, instruction for church, different instruction for you as a minister, as a believer. These are things you also have to do. So you must pay careful attention to your life. And one of the things that as a young person, Apostle Paul wrote this in chapter 6, verse verse 9 to 11, it says that, but those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, into many foolish and harmful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. For some have strayed from the faith in their greediness and pierced themselves with many sorrows. But you, O man of God, it says, flee these things. There are things you have to run away from. He says, but you, oh man of God, this was not a message for the church. It was a message for Timothy, a minister, a pastor, a young minister. He said that one of the exuberances that will come is that desire for money. Normally, if you are not in ministry, every young person wants to, live a better life, make more money, do this and that. He said, don't be caught in that web. Don't be caught in the web of that desire. He said, flee these things. These are things that want to call for your attention. Because you are in ministry, in fact, you may not be able to move at the pace others are moving, because others might be chasing money. You are chasing after souls. You cannot compare yourself with people. It is foolishness to compare yourself with others. See, God has given you an assignment you have to focus on. He says, but you, O man of God, you must always put your desires in check. You must always purify your motives and your intention, that you have not drifted away from your assignment into things other believers who necessarily do not have the call of God upon their life. Now, I have to make this clarification. When I make the call of God upon your life, when I'm talking about Timothy, I'm talking with people who are called into the fivefold. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 12. Says, and he himself gave some to be apostles, some prophets, some. He didn't say all, he said some. So it is not everybody that has a call into the fivefold. So this message is targeted to people, directed to people who have a call into the fivefold, or you are on your life. You started ministry, you have given expression to these things already, for the equipping of the saints, for the work of ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ. You understand? Every believer has have been called into the ministry of reconciliation, going into the world, making disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, of the Son. Jesus has given us that great commission. He has given us the ministry of reconciliation, to reconcile the word. We are to go into the world and preach the gospel. But this particular message is directed at people who are young with the call of God upon their life. Either you're yet to give expression to it, or you've started giving expression to it. And I just needed to make that clarification. So Apostle Paul said, don't be caught in the web of the desire for money. And this is what drives a lot of young people into, adulterating the word of God. They are after gain. Their teachings are, their motives have not been purged and purified. So their messages are targeted at people, getting money out of people. If you are not careful, your desire for money will adulterate your message. It will adulterate the gospel you are preaching. And this is why you must live a consecrated life. You must present your life daily. You must die daily, like Apostle Paul said. You must, die daily to the flesh. You are dying daily to the flesh. You must put your desires in check. Your motives and your intentions must daily be in check. So it says, but you, man of God, flee these things. If you run from one thing, you have to run after another thing. It says, flee the desire for money, flee the exuberances to always have more. It says, pursue righteousness, pursue godliness, pursue faith, pursue love, patience, gentleness. These are things to run after. There will be things you run away from. You have to run after something else. Because you can't just be chasing after the wind. You have to pursue righteousness. He got to a place, he said you will pursue these things with other people who are also having the same goal, having the same focus, because it helps you. When you see people moving in that direction, talking about supernatural relationships, attaching yourself with the people that have the same fear of God as you do. This we conclude this part of this teaching. Maybe some other time we get to delve into other lessons. There are so many lessons you can learn from the life of Timothy. One of the things I really do love about his life was that his father was a Greek, his mother was a Jew. But I believe his mother saw early in him that the gift of God was up inside this guy, and it's better I nurture it. the training, the admonition for training, for bringing up a child is always committed to the fathers. The Bible says, fathers, train up your child in the way he should go. Even in the book of Ephesians, it says, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4, it says, and you, father, do not provoke your children to wrath. Even in the scriptures, you will always see the trend from Abraham. Bible says that he knew, God said concerning Abraham that he knew was going to, train his children, bring up his children in the way of the Lord. It's always about the fathers bringing up a child. But Timothy never had that opportunity of fatherhood, in quote, biological father training him, because his father was a Gentile, a Greek. What can a Greek man communicate to you? They don't know the way of. In fact, they didn't mention the name of the man for you to show the level of importance that was not attached to his life, because he was a Greek, he was a Gentile. But the Bible says that his mother was a Jew. The Jews are known to train up children with Torah right from a very young age. So I believe Timothy's mother, that should be Lois or Eunice. 1 minute. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 15. It says, and that from childhood you have known the Holy Scriptures, which are able to make you wise for salvation. Timothy knew the Holy Scriptures from childhood. How? How did he get to know that? Having a Greek father, how he did that was, he had a mother that nurtured him in the faith, that brought him up in the way of the Lord. And I want to really acknowledge women who have chosen to wear the hearts of men and still put their heads up high. Timothy never had the opportunity of having a father that could train him. That's why even the Bible never mentioned his name. It only mentioned that his father was Greek. His mother brought him up in the way of the Lord, knowing the gift of God was upon his life. So thank God for Timothy, thank God for his mother, thank God for the faith that was in his grandmother. It was also mentioned. This was a trend.